So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff that I think is anticipatory, because I think I know the things you want to ask about. So I'm going to go ahead and anticipate a bunch of them. And then we'll open up as much time as possibly for questions, and we'll try to get the information you are seeking. But the goal today is to make sure you leave with any question you might have about the life of Transfiguration, that you have an answer, at least that I'm going to seek the answer if I can't provide the information that you're seeking in this moment. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, hear our prayers for this parish family. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, and restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right. If you will give me my first slide. I think you have questions about transfiguring our foundations, so I want to go ahead and give you information. As of last week, we have received 286 pledges for $6.585 million. We have collected, already cash in hand, 2.4 and change, which means that we have exceeded our initial goal of raising $6 million, and we are now over halfway towards the stretch of that extra million to build a new sacristy. This is fantastic. And because of our cash position, because so many have been so generous from the very beginning, we're in a great position to go ahead and launch into projects for the next couple of years, to make deposits, to do the things that we need to do to get things rolling. We have plenty of cash on hand to go ahead and get started. Some of the anxiety along the way was, well, how will we budget as we go along, because we're not going to get it all at one time? Well, because so many have been so generous so quickly, we're in great shape to get started. If you'll toggle. Go back one. There we go. I want to catch you up on what we're doing with that money. If you drive around the long way and go back to the northwest, thank you, the northwest corner of our campus, you will see one of the very first things that we did, which we never would have done if we hadn't done this campaign. It's the exact kind of project that you just would never do if you didn't raise the money to do maintenance. And that is a falling down fence in the back corner of our lot, and that terrible looking dumpster corral, which was so embarrassing. And you know, like, how are you going to raise money for a dumpster corral? No. But because it was brought in within this much larger campaign, we were able to knock that out like this. And so that was one of the very first projects we were able to perform. We have a bunch of coming projects. Now, I'm going to tell you about a couple of them. Just keep in mind that our very detailed schedule, down to week by week by week through the fall, got sort of blown up by all of the turmoil in the supply chain. So vendors are very well-meaning and just keep saying, we can't tell you when we will be able to do that job. For example, and then I'm going to tell you a bunch of things we are still scheduled to do. The locking mechanisms on our campus, the automatic locking mechanisms, which make me completely insane. Because they work sometimes, they don't work other times. We want to be able to have the campus operational according to our calendar of events, open when you need it, locked when we don't, etc. We can't get, the vendor can't get the parts because it's chips. Everything's about chips, right? So it's chips, and we can't get them, and so we're just waiting. There's a bunch of things we're just waiting for, and the Building and Grounds and Technology Committee is so on top of all this, along with Bracken Reese. But there's just a bunch of stuff we had been planning for and have the cash to do and can't do. We're just waiting. We're going to replace the labyrinth skylights. which were due on November 8th, weather permitting. The parking lot, a bunch of repairs scheduled for the parking lot are scheduled for, is it not working? Okay, well let me hold it. Huh? Yeah, I'm gonna talk right into it and hope it works. The parking lot, we have a number of repairs. It's not a complete resurfacing, that is down the road. Complete resurfacing for a major section of the parking lot is on the long-term list. That's not what we're talking about imminently, but there are a bunch of improvements in the parking lot that are scheduled now, currently, for Thanksgiving week, because of course you need a week in which no one's here. And that will include landscaping the berm, which is our curb appeal. I mean, all y'all watch HGTV. It's like our curb appeal, and it's really crappy looking. And so we are waiting to re-landscape the berm, so it looks great. It will include replacing the tree that died in one of the little islands in the parking lot that we had cut down. We're going to replace the tree. It will include retrofitting a bunch of the lights out there with LED, just a bunch of the projects on the list having to do with the parking lot. That's scheduled for later in the fall. We have a number of HVAC repairs that are ongoing. We have been able to service the units that go in the hallway right here, which all summer long dripped on us for those of us who were coming to church and created the little drips on the thing, and we had the slip hazard signs in the hallway and made us all crazy. We were able finally to fine-tune that equipment to do the repairs and replacements necessary, so we think we have that fixed. Now we're going to replace those ceiling tiles. But other HVAC unit replacements are scheduled. We have been set back because our long time vendor, who has always done our HVAC for the last almost 8 years, has had a major setback. The founder and leader of that company had a major health issue. And so we've had to go find a different vendor. And that just sort of set us back on our timeline. We're still going to do all those projects, but our anticipated timeline just got delayed. But that includes things like Joel begging us to replace the gallery's HVAC unit. And if you peek up there, you see them all just sweating. And it's because we have a unit that needs to be replaced up there. A bunch of others around the campus that are slated for coming months. We're reviewing bids for the washing, repairing, tuck pointing, painting of all the exteriors when you go around and look up on the roof and the facades and everything. BG&T is receiving bids for that. So that's coming down the pike as well for the church, for Roper Hall, for the South Building. Now, the projects you care about. Not to say you didn't care about those other ones, but I know. The Roper Hall kitchen, we have a design, we have a contractor. We're now in the final stages of refining the plans and refining the work, getting design drawings, and then getting it priced and scheduled. We think we know what it is going to be, so we are actually very close. About 5 months of work of listening to all the stakeholders, the people who are in there the most, resulted in a very clear vision of what we needed to do to make it a better space. And now we have a great looking initial plan that looks awesome. We have the money, we believe, to cover that, and we're just waiting to get it all locked in. We're hoping that we can get the appliances and everything. We'll see. At the very least, we know it's going to entail moving of some walls. The space is going to be reconfigured. It's not just replacing appliances. It is a reconfiguration of that whole space. So at the very least, we know we can get started on moving some of the walls around and getting it set, even if we have to wait for the appliances to come in. The sacristy, which is our stretch goal, thanks to a gift a number of years ago from George Beanfang, we've been sitting on the cash we needed to do the design study for that project for years. So even though we're still raising the money to do the project, we have this wonderful gift that enables us to go ahead and do the design work, which we're doing. So we're partnering together with Beck, a regional design and build firm. They have done a bunch of stakeholding, organizational planning meetings, And as a result, they've come back to us an initial design of what the sacristy would look like. It looks like, in a sense, what they are proposing is come down to the foundation, essentially, and go back up with an expansion of about 50% of additional square footage that would migrate most likely this direction. So for those altar guild members and people who go in there, the door that comes out of the sacristy, the exterior door that comes out of the sacristy, it would expand out in that direction, okay? And everything would just get roomier. We would have more storage. We would have larger passageways. We would bring stuff down from the attics. We would not have to send altar guild members up and down attic stairs to retrieve things. We would have room for all of that. So the initial renderings look great. Beck is coming back with some anticipatory pricing of what that design will cost, because we've said we want to spend $1 million on this. And so they're going to come back and tell us how to do that, all right? So that's very exciting. It's way too preliminary for me to show you, because then you're going to hold my feet to the fire if it ultimately looks different than that in any way, shape, or form. So just hang with me, and I'll be able to show you some renderings soon enough, okay, I promise. In the meantime, we could have the loveliest design that you've ever seen, but until we raise the $1 million, we can't do a thing with it. The church roof, oh, I meant to put church roof, not Roper roof. Roper has a brand new roof. The church roof needs replacement. It's the only roof remaining on the campus that has an old roof on it, and many of you know it's the old slate roof. Well, we need to replace it. And what we found is that we can roof the church with Tesla tiles, that is photovoltaic solar cell tiles, for the virtually, because slate is so expensive, we can do it for virtually the same exact price as Tesla tiles. So one of our long-term strategic goals from 2016, the 2016 strategic vision was help this campus become much more carbon neutral within a decade. This would be a really important step in that direction, that we would be able to generate a significant, not anywhere close to comprehensive, but a significant amount of energy to power our operation just from putting Tesla tiles instead of slate on the church when we already have to re-roof it, all right? Which is pretty cool. We don't yet have a date because, shocker, they can't promise us when they can get us the Tesla tiles. So we're working on it, but that is very much something BG&T is moving towards. And we have been led to understand it is well within our budget as it appears in the facilities audit that became part of the capital campaign. So it's not an excessive expense that goes above and beyond anything. It is within the budget we had allocated for it. And then we would have our own power generation on the roof of our church, which is so cool. The Transept Chapel has been a shorter-term vision that is part of a longer-term vision to have a chapel on this campus for decades, really. It was part of the master plan several decades ago, was to build a chapel on this campus. And then it was originally a part of the Jubilee campaign. Couldn't happen. It was tested for this campaign, was not strongly supported. However, we have received a little over 4 years ago, a $500,000 gift from members of our church that we've just been sitting on. They went ahead and gave the gift for a chapel. In honor, Bruce and Elaine Culver gave the gift in honor of Francis and Bob Martin. And we've just been sitting on it, investing it, and letting it just grow a little bit. So we now have about $650,000 sitting in an account that we are investigating how we could transform the south transept into a side chapel. Not taking it away from the nave, but converting that space into flexible space that in smaller events, small funerals, weekday Eucharists, small weddings, that it could become a chapel with a side altar where we could have flexible seating and a space that would be a bit more intimate. But on Sundays, On larger occasions, the seating would be oriented towards the main altar, and it would just be part of the nave, okay? We're actively investigating that, and Beck, who's helping us not only with the kitchen and with the sacristy, they're also doing this, and they're helping us figure out how to do it within that price point and just investigating all the angles of that, okay? Most likely, that is going to result in the Ross organ finding a new home because it doesn't fit in that space. That was always a temporary solution, was to house it in the transept. So we are actively investigating options for a home for Howard, okay? And the goal is to find a home where it would be played, not disassembled, not sold for parts, not stripped, and not put in a closet somewhere and never played. We're trying to find a home for Howard where it would be played. And in a long-term vision, we would love to think that it could eventually find a home in a chapel on the campus of Parish Episcopal School. When the time comes that they build a chapel on that campus, that it might be able to move there and thus continue to be a part of our broader array. I want to pause. Questions about any of those things? Bill, please.
I'm not sure on the parking lot, but we've always had problems watering trees, and it'd be nice if while we're at it, if possible, to run lines through various islands in order to get trees watered. That's one of the reasons.
Irrigation, yeah. It's a great question.
Might be considered if you're doing this work.
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm going to have to find out if how irrigation is a part of this. I don't know if it is, but I'll find out. That might be part of the longer term when we actually strip it and and totally resurface the whole thing. But I'll find out. Yes, E.T.
What about the ankle-breaking little area that we dug up by the coffee?
Thank you for asking that question, because I get that many times. Yes, I will. I'll repeat the question. E.T. asked about the space right here below the bell tower, which we used for Easter Day for the Great Vigil, where we had church on Easter this year. That space below the bell tower, which many have brought to my attention that there are stones below the surface of the ground that are trip hazards. We actually know that they're there, and it's not on accident, okay? So those are there because they are necessary and required by fire code. So below the surface of the ground there, where that turf is poorly grown in, are a set of pavers that connect the parking lot to the windows of the tower cloister hallway, because by fire code, a fire engine has to be able to reach a certain distance from the church. And as it is now, it's too far away. They have to get an engine all the way up to the glass. And in order to do that, the engine, it has to be on pavement. And so, because they can't get stuck in the mud. If we've just had a rain shower and it's muddy, they're not going to back an engine over a grassy, muddy landscape. So when the tower cloister was built, they put those pavers in there and hoped that it would kind of grow over and become concealed, which it kind of did, but in the meantime has become a bit of a trip hazard. So we're looking into longer-term solutions because we now use that space so often, and it's, again, curb appeal. It's our front door, and we want it to look great, and we're now using it much more frequently for receptions and events. Fellowship ministries are using that space, so we want to do some improvements so that it's not just accomplishing fire code requirements, but it's actually a space that covers the fire code but is much more versatile and safer. So the answer is it's that way because it has to be, but we want to make it better. Did that answer the question? Say again. Tuesday. In that great sense of Tuesday. It is not on the facilities audit. So this is the kind of project that was not anticipated as part of an overall maintenance and improvements. This would be an optional project that a funding source like, and where is Alan Dunlop, a funding source like the endowment might help us with. So we'll be exploring different possibilities in the future. Right now, Building and Grounds has their hands pretty full. I'm just going to say pretty full, and so we're trying not to swamp our leadership with additional projects. We got to keep it in a sequence. All right. We are continuing the campaign because we hope to reach 7 million. And I want to let you know who's helping lead what's called the Capital Continuation Committee. It's being chaired by Robbie Dietrich, a member of the vestry. It's also being led by our ongoing campaign marvelous chairs, the Teeples and Kirkmans, as well as the Mannings and Susan Fisk, are helping coordinate an ongoing effort to see if we can reach that stretch of 7 million, because we really think we can. And to help us ensure that we're communicating clearly and transparently with the congregation about what we're doing. Because it's not only now at this point, it's not only about fundraising, it's about doing what we set out to do. And we want to make sure you know what we're doing, okay? So these are people you can ask questions of. You can also ask me anytime, or our wardens, Oliver Cohn, Mark Ramsey, would love to answer questions. Jody Dalton, chair of the Building and Grounds Committee, would happily answer any questions. Other upgrades that we are doing right now, or have done. The columbarium is having a phase 3 added, essentially as we speak. When you leave here, poke out and look in the garden, and you'll see that we are adding a new phase to the corner. In between the two faces of the columbarium is now a new unit that's going in the corner, because we only have about, 5 niches left or so in the first 2 phases. And so we'll sell the rest of those probably before the end of the year, and we need to have more space. So we're adding a 3rd phase. We're also doing some improvements to the memorial garden so that the trip hazards are improved upon. The ground where we inter ashes in the ground was originally not as popular when it was first built, when that garden was first created. It has now become extremely popular among our families to inter directly in the ground. Well, that area wasn't designed with that in mind, to have such regular usage. So we're doing some improvements to make it easier for us to consistently dig places for interring ashes in the ground. So you're going to see it's looking like a work in progress. It's because it is. We expect all of that to be finished by mid-November. I'm grateful, in this note, to Robin Caldwell, who I saw, and Paul Sternweiss, who together lead our columbarium committee and have been patiently shepherding that whole project through. So very thankful for them. Meanwhile, the parlor has received some improvements, or is in the process of. We had a little bit of cash in a capital maintenance fund left over from a couple of years ago that enabled us to replace one of the middle panes of glass in the parlor that faces the courtyard, to replace it with folding doors to create an indoor-outdoor flexible space. So now the space just flows in and out. And thanks to a gift from the endowment, we resurfaced that whole courtyard, and it is now lovely and open, and we've already used it for a number of receptions and will continue to do so. So the parlor and the courtyard have been significantly improved, and I'm very thankful for the endowment's generosity in that. We're also doing a pretty significant set of facelifts in the parlor of the walls and the space, and thinking about it because, frankly, for us as a church, it functions more like a multi-purpose room than it does like a parlor. We use it much more often, or just as often, for classes, events, as we do for small group gatherings that you would sit in a living room, say. So we're going to be doing some improvements to that space, acquiring some new furnishings that are a bit more flexible. This is being paid for not by the capital campaign or the endowment, but by proceeds from Parish's lease of the youth center last year. Parish expanded into the youth center last year because they needed more room, and we charged them monthly rent. And we squirreled all that money away, and a significant portion of that is what we're using to do the parlor refreshment. Meanwhile, we had an opportunity during the lockdown to add new cabinetry into the second conference room to match the first conference room because we need storage. Cindy's mural, announced on the date of her retirement, is very much underway. And in just a couple weeks, children are going to go over to the artist's studio and begin work on that. He expects it to be installed upstairs in the second floor hallway by Christmas. Okay, so just know that. We are still receiving gifts for that. So if you love and want to honor Cindy, if you're able to, even with a very small gift, please help us as we are raising money to pay for that piece of art. And then the endowment also helped with handrails in the church. How many of you have noticed the handrails in the church? So marvelous. Before I did anything, I want you to know, before I did anything about any of that, I consulted Terry and JD because I wanted to know the history of this. And I knew that the circumstances that have led to people falling and it being dangerous have been a long problem. And so I consulted both of them, and we had wonderful and very helpful conversations. And that helped me feel more confident about going ahead and having that improvement made in the church. We used the same artisan who made the altar rail, which you probably can tell because it matches. And so now lectors and anyone else going in has something to hold on to. I have personally watched too many people fall, and I would say one went to the hospital, more than a few could have gone to the hospital. It was just too terrifying, okay? So we put those in, and they took a little bit of resituating because we put them in and we needed to move them a little bit. But now they're in their place. They are removable when we need to remove them for concerts and other events. But those handrails have already made a difference for some of our folks being more confident getting up to the altar. The endowment paid for the handrails in the church, for the improvements to the parlor courtyard, and for those handsome name tags I see so many of you wearing. Thank you for wearing your name tags. If you don't yet have them, but you know you ordered them, they're on a shipping container in the Pacific Ocean. So we'll see them eventually. We do expect the next phase of name tags to come in coming weeks. If you haven't yet ordered a name tag, please do. We would love for you to have everyone to have a name tag, okay? And that's all thanks to the endowment. Questions about any of those improvements? Oh, yes, childcare wing. During COVID, we had the childcare wing got flooded with a drainage pipe that backed up and flooded several of the classrooms back there. So we had to strip it bare. We lost almost all the cabinetry for Godly Play in a couple of the classrooms. All the flooring had to get replaced. All the baseboarding had to get replaced. I mean, I guess if you had to have something catastrophic like that happen, at least it happened when there wasn't need for those classrooms because it was during COVID. It was during the lockdown, so we weren't using it. We were able to go ahead and get those replaced, and so those classrooms are back up and functional. But if you heard something about that way back when, this is over a year ago, and it took a little while for us to get all the stuff and assemble it and install it, but now it's up and running again. So the childcare wing is back in its great shape. That was one of the last things Cindy had to deal with. Maggie?
That would have been paid for by insurance, wouldn't it?
Deductible. It was not paid for by insurance. We did not meet deductible. No, ma'am. The deductible is quite significant, and that bites us. That bites us hard with some frequency around here. If it's not more than $25,000, then we're on the hook. Yeah. All right. COVID protocols. Oh, go one more. All right. Beginning this weekend, we're starting to have food and refreshments outside again. Next weekend, we have Fig Fest outside. It's time to return to being able to have events outdoors where we can gather people together and offer food and refreshments. We feel like the time is right again to be able to do those things. We took a long break because it was right to do in early fall. I'm looking around and I see some of the people who experienced the breakthrough cases this summer. Fully vaccinated people, because as you remember, we are virtually 100% vaccinated as a congregation. But that's not 100% foolproof. So there were some breakthrough cases, and a few of them were quite significant. So we took a break, but we think it is time to do it outdoors, where our fellowship ministries, EMF, Open Door, groups that gather for meals regularly can begin to do so outside again. And we're looking forward to that. Coffee will begin to be offered on Sunday mornings outside. So just these little things, baby steps. Next weekend, very much hoping you're coming to Fig Fest. I think it's going to be great fun. Please know, if you want to keep your mask on all the time, please keep your mask on all the time, outside, inside. I want us to have a culture that honors everyone at their own where they are, okay? So please join us outside, those of us who are outside for these events. And if you want to come and just be with, because this is what it means to belong to one another, come and don't feel guilty or weird about it at all. If you keep your mask on and you're with us, you're with us. That's what the community is all about. And we need to support one another wherever we are in our own sort of COVID relationship, okay? Our caution, we need to be respectful of each other. Fellowship ministries are in the process of resuming. Almost all of them went into deep hibernation during the long months of the pandemic. Almost all of them, with the exception of second half, which is so wonderful because our ministry for people in the second half of life, our seniors ministry, is the one that rocked it using technology to continue to meet during the pandemic, which I just think is wonderful. Most of the other fellowship ministries, though, went into a sort of long slumber, and that's understandable. So we are in the process of trying to bring those ministries back to life, working on transitions in leadership of a couple of those ministries. We know iParent needs to get going again because that community needs one another, I would say now more than ever. We know that Open Door needs to get back going again because the great majority of people who have come to our church in the last couple of years are somewhere on the LGBT spectrum. And we want to make sure that that ministry is flourishing and a place that folks can come and immediately get acquainted with others. We want to get all of our groups, EMF, humming again. We want to get all our groups going again so that there's places where we're coming together in a relaxed way to build relationships. Belonging, like I wrote about in my Friday e-news this week, it doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen by proximity. It doesn't happen just because we come in the building. It doesn't happen because our mission is really cool and great. Seeking and serving Christ as all persons does not make for belonging. It happens because we do the work it takes to create a community of belonging. So we just have to sort of remember how we have done it in the past and lean into new ideas to help us do it afresh in the future. I know we will. We need volunteers. We are always in need of greeters. Can I get an amen, Ann? Uh-huh. We are always in need of ushers. Can I get an amen, Garcias? Yeah. Usher like every week. Not kidding. Greeters and ushers are always in demand. We can also always use altar guild members and adult acolytes. We also need a few Eucharistic visitors. So if you're thinking about claiming a new ministry opportunity, this is a great time. We sure could use you. Flower Guild. Thanks, Rich. Flower Guild too. All right, next. Financial update. I want you to know we're operating a balanced budget this year. Actually, we're a touch ahead. We're in a good financial position at this point with about 2 months to go, which is a great relief. It is absolutely essential that we end the year balanced or in the black because we are looking ahead at a very intimidating 2022. We were able to secure, in the early stages of the pandemic, a PPP loan that enabled us to maintain all of our nursery workers, everybody. We didn't eliminate a single position, no one. When it was so anxious in those early days, we kept everyone. We kept everything going, and that's enabled us, through the long months, to maintain our full staff footprint. Looking ahead to 2022, what we've lost in these months is loose plate and what we call other revenue. You know, we didn't pass the plate. People weren't in the building. The text to give thing on the virtual service, I mean, ain't a lot of people texting to give. So we are more reliant than ever before, and we already were quite significantly. We are more reliant than ever on what gets pledged is what we have to spend. I mean, it has historically been about 90%. Next year, it's going to be even higher. That ratio is going to get even tighter. And so we're looking ahead at a 2022 with roughly 10% forecasted in increases to operational expenses, just the cost of everything to run this place, because everything costs more right now. And we stretched and brought on a third priest, and we bumped our youth minister back up to full-time. These were future-oriented decisions by the vestry. We knew we needed to get our staff in the right place for what happens on the other side of COVID. And I'm so proud of the courage and foresight of the vestry. Now we have to sustain those. And so next year is looking very intimidating. That's why Ted preached what he did today. And if you haven't been to the service, you get a treat of hearing it at the 11:15. That's why in the materials, if you receive my letter, that's why I had the audacity to ask for you to consider stretching, knowing that 286 of our households just stretched to make a gift to the capital campaign. And some of you stretched a lot. And so if you read that letter and you thought, how could he possibly ask me? Please know I ask it in all humility. I understand. I also know we want to continue to be the church we are next year. And our mission is as important, if not more important than ever. So I ask, in a spirit of humility, presenting what we know we need. And if you're able to stretch, we will be so grateful. And if you've already gotten to your limit, I'm so thankful for all of your generosity, and you're amazing. I also know that we're a people of hope and people of faith, and we will be okay next year. Come what may, we're going to be okay. It's just so vital that we be Transfiguration next year and not miss a beat. Questions?
So Fig Fest
Mm-hmm.
and Open Door
Mm-hmm.
are going to be on Ankle Breaker, which we don't have plans for or money to rectify.
Yes.
So that's the second Tuesday of next week.
Yes. Indeed. E.T. is going to be on me about those ankle breakers out there. I can tell. E.T., I'll tell you what, Sophie would gladly visit with you about a donation opportunity. Or anyone else. I don't mean to punt it and be so sort of like cute and off-putting that I say we're going to get to it when we get to it. We know it's important. We want to do it right, though. And we need to figure out how much that's going to cost and then figure out how to pay for that. Yep. Yes?
With news that vaccinations for the 5 to 11 age group will be coming hopefully within weeks, do you have any sense as to where we are in terms of maskless services?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you. Yeah. The question is, with vaccinations anticipated for ages 5 through 11, what are we thinking in terms of mask required for our life, at least indoors? And I would say the time will come when we make masks optional, recommended but optional. but I want to see the vaccinations roll out effectively and successfully. Do a fresh surveying of the community, and then we'll make decisions at that point. It is hard for me to imagine that we would change current policy before 2022. So you can pretty safely assume that we will be masks required indoors through the end of the year. And around that time, we'll reevaluate and we'll see. Yes, Maggie.
So next week when we have big fest between services, outdoors, we don't have to wear masks.
That is your choice. Recommended but not required.
It's part of our costume.
Well, that's a great point. Yes.
And I definitely plan to wear a costume, and I want to encourage everybody else.
Thank you, Maggie. Costumes recommended next week. You can even incorporate a mask into your costume if you want to. The staff have a costume, thanks to Ted. We have a costume plan, which is going to be great fun. All right, a couple more things. Advent and Christmas. The Christmas service schedule will be the same as it has always been traditionally. 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10:30, Christmas Day at 10. We're going back to our regular service schedule. We will also offer Stations of the Nativity outside. For many of you, you took advantage of that last year. We're going to offer it again, okay? For everyone who is maybe not sure that what they're going to do for Christmas, because you might be anxious and others might be anxious about a church full on Christmas Eve. I understand. Well, we also just thought that event was really quite lovely. And so we're going to offer that again in addition to the full rota of our Christmas services. Advent will be themed on Narnia. So last year's very successful program on A Christmas Carol led the team and I to brainstorm what other fun, playful story from our tradition could we lean into during Advent that also has things to teach us. And so we're going to lean into Narnia for all ages. So just be ready to have Advent in Narnia, okay? Everybody. Lastly, I want to let you know that I celebrated a 7th anniversary as your rector a couple weeks ago. And that's amazing, 7 years. Woo, went fast. And so next year, I will go on sabbatical in August through November. So I will be away August through November of next year, all right? I was awarded what's called a Lilly grant. The Lilly Family Foundation gives grants to clergy for renewal and refreshment programs. They award about 10% of the applications, and I was very grateful to receive one of those grants. So I'm so thankful that next fall I will be away on sabbatical, and thanks to this generous grant, be up to some really cool and interesting things. And I'll have more to say about that next year, okay? I'll have much more to share about that. Joel Martinson will also go on sabbatical next year from April through July. So we will not be on sabbatical at the same time. He was on sabbatical the year before I came, and now is in the cycle of sabbaticals that we offer clergy and full-time programmatic lay employees. He will be on sabbatical next year again. And he'll have more to say about that as well. Any final questions? Laurel?
I'd just like to say publicly to thank you and the staff for the care and the transparency and how hard you have worked to keep us together in COVID.
Thank you. Yes, Susan.
One question.
Yes.
The higher-ups in the Episcopal Church, will we ever go back to the Common Cup?
Oh, yes. So the Common Cup is already allowed if you want to reintroduce it. We're not yet ready to reintroduce it. But it will be permissible again. The use of the chalice for communion. We will go back to that. And I would say not in the distant, in the distant future, but probably it is possible it will happen around the same time that we are, say, going to masks recommended but not required. That we will come up with a strategy where people can choose to receive from the cup or choose not to receive from the cup. The challenge with that, and I'm going to go ahead and anticipate this because I want you to think about it, the common cup is one of the most central expressions of Christian unity that there is. Rich or poor, black, white, homeless, billionaire, wherever we are, we share the cup. And when we have a cup for some and not for others, it just creates complications in our theology of what communion is. And so we're thinking carefully not only about how to do it safely, but also how to do it and not break the symbol of the Eucharist. So it takes a lot of really careful thinking. And for me, it's very important that we offer bread and wine together because the prayer book says that we should, and that's one of the things that the Reformation was fought over. And so how do you offer it in both kinds if only some feel comfortable drinking from a cup in the midst of a pandemic? So we're just thinking very carefully through it. Rich, you had a question.
This is not fig related, but next Sunday afternoon after Fig Fest at 2 o'clock, I have 3 extra tickets for the Supreme Leader, or comedy about Kim Jong-un, at the Kalita Humphreys Theater. Anybody that would be interested in taking 1, 2, or 3 of those tickets, please see me.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. If you have any interest in local theater, come see Rich. Any other questions? Hey, y'all, if you walk out of here and you think, oh, I wish I'd asked him blah, 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 email me. No sweat. Email me, and if it's a question I think others really want to know, I'll dump it in the e-news. I'll make sure everybody gets that information, okay? Because I want to make sure you have the information you're seeking. So grateful for you, friends. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.